There are lots of different ways that people celebrate New Year's and New Year's Eve. There's something about a new beginning that we find so attractive. I think it's probably we find new beginnings so hopeful because we're so aware of our old failings. And so to start new again, it's very attractive. And so people have these New Year's celebrations, these ways of remembering the new year. And I suppose partially it depends on what era you were raised in. Most of you who are under 40, if I would say the name Guy Lombardo, you'd go, who? But those of you who are certainly over 50 know who he was. Some of you would, in the intermediate, would remember Dick Clark and the Rockin' New Year's Eve in Times Square. Candace and I were just in Times Square a couple weeks ago, and it was packed. I can't imagine what it would be like to be in Times Square on New Year's Eve. I have to tell you the truth, I don't like people that well. At least not here and here and wall-to-wall people. You want to go, I just wouldn't enjoy that. And then there's the ball coming down. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And the ball lights up. Candace was doing some research on that. That's actually been going on since 1907 in Times Square. I think it started out as a candle. No, I'm just kidding. Lots of different ways to celebrate New Year's Eve and then New Year's Day. There's parties, drinking, lots of drinking for New Year's Eve and New Year's. Football games. For some people, it's just a day off. You don't have to do anything. A day off work or a day off school. There are some interesting traditions that go along with New Year's and New Year's Eve. Some of them I get, some of them I don't get. One of my favorites is kissing your loved one at New Year's, just the strike of midnight. Although Candace and I haven't been awake at midnight for a number of years. We just have to do it in the morning. Then there's these celebrations that we have and these traditions we have that have to do with food. The traditional New Year's food in most households is pork. And there's a specific reason. You don't eat turkeys or chickens because they scratch backwards. And no one wants to go backwards. You don't eat cows because they just stand out in the field and chew the cud. They don't go anywhere. But pigs, when they eat, root forward. Have you ever seen a pig eat? Now, some of you haven't. It's not that pleasant. But when they eat, they root forward and they get their food like that. And so pork is their traditional food for New Year's Day because it's looking forward. It's going forward. And so my wife's mother always had pork and sauerkraut for New Year's Day. I'm kind of wondering what soybeans are a symbol of. If you eat soybeans on veggie meat on New Year's Day, I don't know what that means. There are other traditions that start the new year with your larder or your cupboards full. Because if you have your cupboards full, it portends a prosperous new year. Other people eat, people in the South, I'm told, eat black-eyed peas on New Year's. It's supposed to be a sign of good luck. Some people eat lentils, and the legend is that they eat lentils because lentils look like tiny coins. And so it would be a prosperous new year. You're supposed to, on New Year's Day, wear something new. New clothes, because if you wear new clothes, it portends that you're going to have more new clothes for the rest of the year. On New Year's Day, you're not supposed to break anything or throw anything away, because if you break it on New Year's Day, you'll have a year of breakage. And these are all superstitions. Many people, when they celebrate New Year's, they like to do it as loud as possible. And so oftentimes when midnight comes on New Year's Eve and the New Year's Day comes along, people go out and honk their horns or shoot guns or shoot off firecrackers and, all those things people like to do. And the reason they do it is they don't even know why they're doing it. But the tradition was that it would scare away the evil spirits. And so you have to make a lot of noise because evil spirits are afraid of noise. You didn't know that, did you? It's a shame that we don't really know how cunning the evil spirits are. We think we can scare them away with noise. Some people like to usher out the old year and usher in the new year. And so there's a tradition. My wife actually did this. The last time she was awake on New Year's Eve was 2010. It was 2009 was a horrible year in our household. And so on New Year's Eve 2010, actually it was New Year's Eve 2009, she stayed up till midnight that night, went to the front door, opened it, and went like this. Kicking out 2009, ushering in 2010. It's an interesting thing we do. 2015. Who would have ever believed? Our pioneers, James and Ellen White, Joseph Bates, Uriah Smith, the revered names from our Adventist church history, they'd have been shocked that we're still here in 2015. Mr. Foley, who was the head elder of my home church in Scottsburg, Indiana, when I was a little boy, he's now been gone probably 20 or 30 years. He's dead. He'd have been shocked. Sometimes I'm ashamed that I'm not shocked we're still here. We should be shocked we're still here. Something else that many people do on New Year's is make those New Year's resolutions. Things we're going to do in the new year. Plans that we have for the new year. This year, I'm going to lose weight. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands on that one. Or, here's a better one. I'm going to watch my weight. For many years, I decided on New Year's Day I would watch my weight. And for many years, I watched it get bigger and bigger and big. And that's not the point, was it? When you're supposed to watch your weight. It's not the point. But that shows the problem with New Year's resolutions. Many people make New Year's resolutions. I'm not going to lose my temper this year as much. I'm going to be on time to work. Here's one of my dream New Year's resolutions. I'm going to be on time to Sabbath school every week. I'm going to volunteer. I'm going to be a better housekeeper. So and so and so. You know them. You've made them. How long do they last? A couple days? Well, at least I usually make it through 1 week. Wow. People say, I'm going to read my Bible through in the new year. I made that resolution for many years. Now I have become one of the foremost authorities on the book of Genesis. At least the first 30 chapters. They're hard to keep. Why? Well, it's because change doesn't come that easily, does it? Change is so hard. If change came easily, we would all be our ideal weight. We would all have the perfect haircuts. If change came easily, we would always be on time. Change does not come easily. And that's one of the problems with New Year's resolutions. New Year's resolutions. A few years ago, I made only one New Year's resolution. And I make the same resolution every single year. My New Year's resolution is to make no New Year's resolutions. Because New Year's resolutions don't really work. Because you can't decide to do something once a year and expect that it's going to change the direction of your life. It just doesn't work. And so, how can we get beyond just these New Year's resolutions that we break anyway and live our lives so that our lives are actually changed throughout the year, not just once? How can I live out my life so that my goals last all year long? And while this may sound simplistic, and I apologize if it does, but the real secret we can find from Paul, who understood that the only way to live out New Year's resolutions is to live them every single day. It's a daily resolution. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 31, Paul says something quite interesting. 1 Corinthians 15 is on the topic of the resurrection. And so therefore it talks about death some. And so Paul talks in 1 Corinthians 15, verse 31. He talks about being in danger and some of the trials that he's faced beasts in verse 32. Verse 31, he says, I protest, brothers, by my pride in you, which I have in Christ Jesus our Lord. I die every day. Now, does Paul physically die every day? No, he doesn't physically die every day. But what Paul's trying to do is point out the importance of the resurrection. For people who are dead, the resurrection is the antidote to death. The resurrection is the solution to death. And so Paul has lived through so many perils. It's like he's been on the verge of death a number of times. And so Paul uses what I think is just a little bit of exaggeration here. He says, I die daily. But I think you have to also realize that Paul's also speaking spiritually. And he says the resurrection is important because of physical death. But I think he wants us to also see that the resurrection is important because of spiritual death. And so Paul says, I die every day. Every day I die. And I think he's talking about in a spiritual way. Paul understood the secret of really living your resolutions is by daily dying to ourselves and allowing Jesus to resurrect us. That's where the resurrection is. Just like a physically dead person, their only hope is a resurrection of Jesus. A spiritually dead person, our only hope is the spiritual resurrection that Jesus offers. That's our only hope. There are no do-it-yourself, come back to life kits in the physical realm or in the spiritual realm. It's all based on Jesus. And so Paul, in arguing for the importance of the resurrection, says, I die every day. And if I die every day, what do I need? I need Jesus to resurrect me every day. Every day. Now Jesus says something similar to this over in Luke chapter 9. This importance of the daily walk with Jesus. Luke chapter 9, verse 23. Now this is a hard text. We're going to read it, and you're going to say, oh, okay. But don't discount how hard this text is. Luke chapter 9, verse 23, Jesus actually here quoting, it says, if any would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. Paul says that he dies daily. Jesus says, if you want to follow me, you have to take up your cross and follow me. The idea, same idea. Oh, by the way, did you see I skipped a word? Thank you. Nobody went, what? Usually somebody looks up at me and goes, oh. Jesus says, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross. daily and follow me. It's an everyday thing. Because of the power of sin in this world, because of the power of selfishness in our lives, we have to decide every single day that we want to follow Jesus. Every single day. This text is not an easy text. How many of you like to deny yourselves? I don't. I don't like to deny myself. I don't like to deny what things I want to do, the things I like to eat, things I like to think about. I don't like to, we don't, especially living in an affluent society as we do, we don't like to deny ourselves of things. We don't like to sacrifice. But Jesus says, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me. Every single day, we have to decide to follow Jesus. You know, this is the problem with New Year's resolutions. New Year's only comes once every 365 days. You can decide on New Year's Day to follow Jesus. But if you haven't decided all the 364 or 365 in leap year, you're going to fail. Simply. Even if you say, well, I will take up my cross weekly or monthly, not going to work. The secret of living a successful Christian life is dying to ourselves every single day. Now, this is not easy. I understand it's not easy. But the problem with New Year's is it only comes once a year. And this is something that has to be done every day. Paul tries to give us a little insight into what it really takes in the scripture reading we read, Galatians chapter 2, verse 20. Galatians chapter 2, verse 20. This text sounds so simple to read, but I'm convinced that we could study this text for the rest of our lives and still never maybe totally understand it until Jesus explains it to us in the earth made new. But this is our goal. Paul says, I have been crucified with Christ, taking up your cross, as Jesus says, daily. Paul says, I have been crucified with Christ. I think it's talking about the same experience. I've been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And the life I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. Paul says, I am crucified with Christ. That's daily experience. And what happens when we decide that we want Jesus to control our lives? We've been crucified with him. When we decide we want Jesus to control our lives, suddenly we realize we're not in control. If he's in control. I texted you, Petros, I texted you this week. Some of you have probably seen there was an old bumper sticker or license plate many years ago. It said, God is my co-pilot. Sounds good, doesn't it? But I saw somebody else post, had a bumper sticker that in essence said, if God is your co-pilot, change places. God should not be our co-pilot, because that suggests that you are in control. And God is in the second seat. And if God is in your second seat, you're going to fail. If God is your co-pilot, change seats, because he needs to be the one in total control. It means a life that is characterized by saying every single day yes to Jesus. To whatever that means in your life, we all have different problems, we all have different temptations, we all have different challenges, we have different attitudes. But I can tell you that Jesus is the answer to every single one of them. Period. I am crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. That is our goal in life. I tell you, I don't think we get that. How Christ lives in us. If we understood that more, we would fail less. And I'm not trying to put you on a guilt trip, but if we understood how Christ could live through us more, we would fail less. But the fact is that sometimes we don't allow him to live through us, and we do fail. And what happens? I want to share with you a wonderful promise from the book of Lamentations. Now, I don't know about you, but when I'm looking for something to lift me up, I go to Lamentations. Lamentations chapter 3. Isaiah, Jeremiah, the Lamentations of Jeremiah. Written when the Jews are in Babylonian captivity. It was a hard time. But God knew that in such a hard time, they needed hope. And so God inspired Jeremiah back here in Lamentations chapter 3 to write these words. Lamentations chapter 3 verse 21. Starting with verse 21. Lamentations 3:21. Jeremiah writes, "But this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope." Something he's going to remember will bring him hope. Verse 22. "The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning." Great is your faithfulness. They are new every morning. You get up one morning, you ask Jesus to walk with you, and you mess up. You come back the next morning and you want Jesus to walk with you. You feel ashamed and sad because you messed up yesterday. The good news is his grace is there waiting for you. The good news is that even when you mess up and you fail and you fall and you sin, his mercies are new every single day. His steadfast love never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every single morning. No wonder Jeremiah says, "Great is your faithfulness." He continues on, "The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore I will have hope in him. The Lord is good to those who wait for him, to the soul who seeks him. It is good that one should wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord." And verse 27 is an interesting phrase. "It is good for a man that he bear the yoke in his youth." Start when you're a young person to realize how great, how wonderful is the love of God. How great is his mercies. And he starts over and he wants to give them to you all over every single morning if you will accept. There's a passage from the book Steps to Christ that I really love. It's Steps to Christ, page 70. And this is in your bulletin. So if you want to pull your bulletin out and look at the back of your bulletin, you can see this paragraph. Steps to Christ, page 70. I don't know how many of you have read the book Steps to Christ lately. I hope all of you have at some point in time. But I've read the book Steps to Christ more than I've read any other single book over and over again. The book Steps to Christ. I don't know how many times I've read it. 20 times maybe. It's an easy, quick read. The chapters are short. You can easily read it in 2 or 3 days or in a week even. It's quite easy to read. And what's amazing is many people think of the book Steps to Christ as being for baby Christians. I'll tell you what, if you've been walking with Jesus 50 years, you read the book Steps to Christ, your heart is going to be blessed. So if you haven't read the book Steps to Christ lately, I encourage you as this new year begins to start systematically reading through the book Steps to Christ. One of the things we'll do during the 10 days to prayer that I was talking about during the announcement period is we will be referencing regularly back to the chapter in the book Steps to Christ called The Privilege of Prayer. It alone is worth the price of the book if it were $1,000. Just that little chapter called The Privilege of Prayer. But in the book Steps to Christ, page 70, the first paragraph, you have it there before you. It says, consecrate yourself to God in the morning. Make this your very first work. Let your prayer be, take me, O Lord, as wholly thine. I lay all my plans at thy feet. Use me today in thy service. Abide with me, and let all my work be wrought in thee. This is a daily matter. Each morning, consecrate yourself to God for that day. Now, I know mornings are more difficult for some people, but I'm convinced the best time to do this is in the morning. Whether or not it doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a full hour of devotion. Maybe I hope that most of you find your way to having a long period of devotion sometime, worship sometime during the day. Sometimes people aren't able to do that in the morning, but at least do this in the morning. Back in the country, we used to have an old saying. It said, it's too late to shut the barn door when the horse is already out. And so it's too late to commit yourself to Jesus in the morning when you already failed. And so I like what she says here. She says, this is a daily matter. Each morning, consecrate yourself to God for that day. Surrender all your plans to Him to be carried out and given up as His providence shall indicate. And that's kind of hard. You know, we make our plans for the day. How many times do you like it when your plans don't go as you planned them? I don't like it. But she says, surrender all your plans to Him to be carried out or given up as His providence shall indicate. Thus, day by day, you may be giving your life into the hands of God, and thus your life will be molded more and more after the life of Christ. Consecrate yourself to God in the morning. Make this your very first work. Many years ago when I first stumbled upon this passage, probably not the first time, but at some point in time, it's been at least, I was trying to think of it while I was in the pulpit in first service. I've thought about it since then. It's been at least 27 or 28 years ago, because we were pastoring in the Philadelphia Chestnut Hill Church. And Harold Green, who is Darlene's brother, was one of our church members. And I asked him to help me on this verse because I wrote a little song to this prayer, and he wrote it out on a staff for me. So, trying to remember, it's been at least 25 or 30 years ago. But Candace and I wrote a little song that we want to share with you. Can, would you come up, please? I want to share with you this song. That is this prayer. I'm going to sing it through for you several times, and so you might be able to get an idea of how it goes. And you might be able to use it yourself. It goes like this. Why don't you get up here so they can hear you also. Take me, O Lord, as wholly thine. I lay all my plans at thy feet. Use me today in thy service. Abide with me and let all my work be wrought in thee. Join us if you can pick up just a few of the notes. Take me, O Lord, as wholly thine. I lay all my plans at thy feet. Use me today in thy service. Abide with me and let short time and you'll have it down perfectly, right? Take me, O Lord, as wholly thine. I lay all my plans at thy feet. Use me today in thy service. Abide with me and let all my work be wrought in thee. Dear Lord, that's our prayer for today, our prayer for tomorrow, our prayer for the day after, until you come.